I'm Ben Meiselas from the MeidasTouch Network. Donald Trump has just filed another completely frivolous lawsuit that he is almost certainly going to lose and will almost certainly be sanctioned for or have to pay attorney's fees after losing this case. He brought this defamation lawsuit that was just filed against the Washington Post for an article they wrote about the Trump Media Group. Trump filed this lawsuit through the entity he controls, Trump Media and Technology Group, which is the parent company for his failing social media platform, Truth Social. In this lawsuit, Donald Trump is demanding, it appears, $3.78 billion, because Trump just makes up numbers in these lawsuits. And I say it appears, because in addition to just pulling this number at random, basically for the headline grabbing value of it, hoping that large media networks just write that big number. If you actually go into the complaint, when you go into the damages, they confuse their billions and they write $2.78 billion in another number because they're just making all of this stuff up. And the lawyer who filed this lawsuit, by the way, is a solo practitioner in Tampa, Florida, who specializes in workers' compensation law. It's a one-person firm in Tampa who filed this complete mess of a lawsuit. I guess that's the only lawyer that Donald Trump can find right now. The lawyer, by the way, is named Jason Coble. And Jason, you should watch our videos here, because what you need to realize is that MAGA stands for Make Attorneys Get Attorneys. And while you may get some mentions in the press for filing this thing, just take a look at what's happened to some of Donald Trump's other lawyers who have filed these completely frivolous cases like the one that you just brought here. So this case is Trump Media versus the Washington Post Company, LLC. As you look at the lawsuit, it's seeking $3.78 billion, and it's saying that Trump Media was defamed in an article that Washington Post published in May. The article was about how Trump Media Group may have received loans from a Caribbean bank with ties to Russian oligarchs, and how the company was lent $8 million in December of 2021, and then in February of 2022, how executives inside, the article states, were deeply concerned about this loan. And the article alleges that the appropriate disclosures were not made to shareholders about the loan, and that the loan may have some self-dealing taking place with the fact that the loan, it was alleged, was arranged by Patrick Orlando, who created the SPAC, Digital World Acquisition Company, which is supposed to merge with Trump Media. A few things to point out here before going through the lawsuit. In Trump's recent financial disclosure for his run for the Republican nominee for United States president, he had to state the values of his various holdings. And so if you go right here to his financial disclosures and you go to the Trump Media disclosure, which is line 394, he says the entire value of Trump Media is somewhere between $5 million and $25 million. So the fact that he's claiming as damages in this lawsuit against Washington Post is $3.78 billion is completely ludicrous. But if you go to see what he alleges the damages are for and why he says they're so high, in addition to the fact that it's just a completely made-up number, he says that publication of this Washington Post article destroyed at least 2.78. You see, it's a different number. If you go to paragraph 25, the article destroyed at least $2.78 billion of implied equity value in Trump Media and Technology Group. To make matters worse, after reading this Washington Post article, the Trump Media's banker, J.P. Morgan Chase, wow, I don't know that they were the banker, J.P. Morgan Chase contacted Trump Media and Technology Group to inquire about the year-plus-old transaction with this Caribbean bank that I mentioned, Paxim Bank. Prior to this call, JP Morgan had expressed no concern with the transfers. The calls on May 17th and May 18, 2023, evidence JP Morgan's concern about Trump Media and Technology Group's business caused by this false and defamatory statements published and republished by Washington Post. And go to the article. The article from Washington Post is called Trump Media Took $8 million Loan from Porn-Tied Bank, Unknown Trust. And then it goes in to say how a trust linked to a porn-friendly bank could gain a stake in Trump's Truth Social. It talks about the trust, ES Family Trust, offered $8 million in loans to Trump Media. In the defamation lawsuit, Trump Media claims that they disclosed this loan to shareholders, which whether they did or did not will ultimately be in their financial reports. But when you go into the financial reports, and we've talked about this before, they are under criminal investigation, SEC investigation, FINRA investigation. Here, let's just pull up their recent 10K filing that Digital World Acquisition Company made about the merger with Trump Media Group. The first thing I want to point out, this is not about the various criminal investigations and SEC investigations. If you just go into the criteria for what Digital World Acquisition Company, the SPAC, is supposed to be merging into, it says target size. Consistent with our investment thesis as described above, we plan to target businesses of a total enterprise value from $400 million to $2 billion in the Americas. I just point that out because if you go to Trump's election financial disclosure that I showed you before, the valuation of Trump Media is between $5 and $25 million. So already, if I were to be an investor, setting aside the Washington Post article, one of the biggest, I would never be an investor, but one of the biggest red flags for me would be, well, you're saying that you're trying to find a company that has a valuation between 400 and 2 billion, and Trump Media claims that its valuation is somewhere between $5 and $25 million. So it doesn't even fit your criteria. Then you go into the portion of their 10K filings with the SEC about civil and criminal investigations, and they talk about we're cooperating with a FINRA inquiry concerning events, specifically a review of trading that preceded the public announcement of the merger agreements. According to FINRA's request, the inquiry should not be construed as an indication that FINRA has determined that any violation of NASDAQ rules or federal security laws have occurred, nor as a reflection upon the merits of the securities involved. We are also cooperating with an SEC investigation, including responding to several document requests and subpoenas from the SEC to us and certain of our directors seeking various documents and information regarding, among other things, meetings of our directors, communications with and the evaluation of potential targets, including Trump Media Group, communications relating to Trump Media Group, agreements with and payments made to certain advisors, investors, including investor meetings and agreements, the appointment of certain of our officers and directors, policies and procedures related to trading, and documents sufficient to identify banking, telephone, and email addresses, our due diligence regarding Trump Media Group, communications regarding and due diligence of potential targets other than Trump Media Group, and relationship between and among the company and other entities. You keep going, and it talks about the SEC also issued an order of examination pursuant to Section 8E of the Securities Act with respect to the S-4 registration statement relating to the transactions with Trump Media Group, and further subpoena in support thereof. The subpoena seeks additional documents and information with respect to, among other things, communications regarding and due diligence of potential targets other than Trump Media Group, relationships between and among the company. And it goes on to say, in addition, the company and each of its board of directors received grand jury subpoenas seeking certain of the same documents demanded in the above referenced SEC subpoenas, along with requests relating to the company's S-1 filings, communications with or about multiple individuals. That's a DOJ criminal investigation grand jury subpoena. The subpoenas and the underlying investigations by the SEC and U.S. Department of Justice can be expected to delay the effectiveness of the S-4 registration statement, which could materially delay, materially impede, or prevent the consummation of the transaction. I should also mention this whistleblower complaint filed by Will Wilkerson. Here you see it right here to the SEC. He also gave these documents that he gave to the SEC to the DOJ. Will Wilkerson was a former top executive at Truth Social, at Trump Media, who left and then told the SEC, it's been reported, and told the DOJ that the Trump organization, the Trump media rather, engaged in all of this fraudulent conduct and provided that information to like 150,000 emails and records. So I give you all of that information because here Donald Trump is claiming in this defamation case against the Washington Post that it was the Washington Post's article that has caused $3.78 billion in damages, and that has destroyed the complete enterprise value, even though it's somewhere between $5 and $25 million of the entity, despite the fact in Trump Media's merger partners' own disclosures, they talk about the various criminal investigations and civil investigations that are taking place here. I mean, look, I can go into some of these allegations, just briefly. If you go to section 4, it talks about how the article, first there was this Guardian article. By the way, I think Devin Nunes and Trump Media also sued the Guardian. And then here, Washington Post followed up and they did their own article, the one I just told you about, that links it to this porn-backed bank in the Caribbean. And then it goes on to cite how people on social media reposted it and retweeted it and how the message got out to everybody. But the bottom line is, at the end of the day, one, truth is a defense to defamation, and Washington Post stands by their story. But number two, I just read for you the disclosures that are in Digital World Acquisition Company's SEC filings anyway, which talk about various investigations taking place. As I mentioned at the outset, this case was filed by someone named Jason Coble. I've never heard of this lawyer before. I searched him on the Florida Bar website. He is a workers' compensation lawyer in the Tampa area. I don't know if he's ever filed a defamation case before. One of his clients, though, did give him a 5-star review on his website and stated that Jason is a very energetic and exciting lawyer, and he's a good person, and he led me on 2 decisions which were exemplary. Jason hasn't yet come close to his potential, is what this 5-star review says. So I guess he's trying to reach his potential. When you see here on his website, there's no defamation section. He's workers' compensation, Social Security, disability, and I guess personal injury lawyer is what's stated on his website. But this has all the markings, in my own opinion, of a kind of frivolous, vexatious lawsuit. You'll recall from prior reporting, Donald Trump, he loses all the lawsuits that he basically files. But we talked about recently how he lost the $100 million, whatever, defamation. He makes up the numbers. Defamation case against the New York Times. They prevailed, and the judge in that case explained how the following: courts have long recognized that reporters are entitled to engage in legal and ordinary news gathering activities without fear of tort liability, as these actions are at the very core of the protected First Amendment activity. And in that case, Justice Reed ruled in favor of the New York Times and the reporters and ordered Donald Trump to pay attorney's fees. We've talked before how Donald Trump in Florida was sanctioned close to $1 million for filing frivolous lawsuits against Hillary Clinton and other people by a federal judge there named Judge Middlebrooks. Also, Trump's lawyer, Alina Habba, was sanctioned close to $1 million as well. If you just look where this case was even filed in, pulling up the lawsuit here, it's filed in the wrong court. It's filed in the Circuit Court of the 12th Judicial Circuit in and for Sarasota County, state of Florida, Circuit Civil Division. Trump Media is based in Sarasota, apparently. I think it has like a vacant office there, but it's apparently based there. Washington Post, though, is not based there. So this case belongs in federal court. And likely doesn't even belong in Florida. It should probably be filed either in the District of Columbia or in a federal court wherever it's determined the principal place of business of the Washington Post is, but it certainly doesn't belong in state court in Florida. So you'll see Washington Post will file a motion immediately to move the venue and to remove this case and say that there is no jurisdiction in this specific court. And so whether it's going to be in federal court or the venue will be transferred to another federal court in a different state, it does not belong in the state. And, we'll follow this lawsuit, of course, but ultimately it's going to be heading towards a path of a loss. And, I don't know much about this lawyer, Jason Coble, but, Donald Trump obviously has a longer term relationship with Alina Habba. So I don't know how they're splitting the millions of dollars in sanctions. But, this case is a very frivolous case. Washington Post, I think, will prevail. They'll get their attorney's fees. And, I think not only that, in my own opinion, I think this lawyer who signed up for this thing is going to get in some hot water over filing this as well. Again, MAGA make attorneys get attorneys, and that's why I also just went through with you the various filings that have been made with the SEC, the investigations that are actually taking place, the representations that Trump has had to disclose in general, because again, the Washington Post is relying on sourcing, but also if you just look at some of the filings that Trump made, I mean, it's some of that stuff's in the filings as well. I'm Ben Meiselas from the MeidasTouch Network. Thanks for watching. Hit subscribe. We're on our way to 1.5 million subscribers thanks to your support. Check us out at patreon.com/MeidasTouch. Wherever you get audio podcasts, subscribe to the MeidasTouch podcast. It's free. Hit subscribe on our YouTube channel, and thanks for watching, and have a great day.
At MeidasTouch, we are unapologetically pro-democracy, and we demand justice and accountability. That's why we're spreading our message to Convict 45. That's right, gear up right now with your Convict 45 tees and pins at store.meidastouch.com. That's store.meidastouch.com.